Hello, and welcome back to Things I Want My Kids to Know with me, Ted Bradshaw. Today, we're going to talk a bit about self-esteem. First of all, we're going to talk about what it is. So, what I mean by self-esteem is the respect and kind of value you hold about yourself. How you see yourself, how you speak to yourself, how you treat yourself in comparison to the way that you look at or speak to or treat other people, or perhaps the way that you view yourself in comparison to the way that other people view you. What I mean by that is when you have low self-esteem, you might really struggle to give yourself credit or to see the value in who you are or what you have done. Whereas for other people, you might be able to say, oh, they've done really well there. I can see what they've done. I can see their qualities. You might really struggle to do that for yourself. Or if somebody tries to pay you a compliment or you're given a load of feedback, loads of which is positive, but there's one little comment about what you could do differently. If you have low self-esteem, you are likely to zoom right in on that comment. Now, don't get me wrong, we all do that to some degree. But when you constantly feel like you are not good enough in some way, that could be a universal thing, like a sense I'm not good enough in general, or it could be something specific, like I'm not intelligent enough or I'm not attractive enough. It is like wearing a pair of glasses. I don't know why I've just made that noise. That's me putting on a pair of glasses. There we go. If you're wearing a pair of pink glasses, everything you look at would be pink. So somebody could show you something white and you would think, well, no, that's pink. Somebody would show you something black and you'd say, well, that's dark pink. If you are wearing not good enough glasses, I am not good enough glasses, it doesn't really matter what you do or what people say to you. You'll always feel like, well, that wasn't good enough. It acts like a filter, I suppose, is what I'm saying. If you are afraid that you are not good enough, your brain will be actively picking out all the pieces of information that kind of confirm that because it's afraid. I'm afraid of being not good enough. I don't want to be found out as being not good enough. So your brain's actively looking for, have I done that right? Is that okay? When you do something well or somebody pays you a compliment or you look in the mirror and you see some good things, your brain finds it hard to see it because it's not relevant. What's relevant is we need to pick out the bits that aren't good enough so we can fix them or hide them. That's how it acts like a filter. There is the opposite end, of course. So people with super high self-esteem, there's healthy high self-esteem, like good self-esteem, which is seeing yourself reasonably, fairly and clearly. You are able to acknowledge the things that you're good at, acknowledge that you have inherent self-worth. We'll come back to that in a minute, that you don't have to do anything in particular to still be worthwhile as a human being, but you're able to notice things that are good about yourself. You're able to notice mistakes that you've made or things that aren't so brilliant, but not be devastated by them. Or to sort of notice things you've not done brilliantly and not feel like that means you are not worth something. I suppose that would be a good way of putting it. Sometimes I describe it as, this is my sort of revealing my nerd angle on most things, which is if you've ever watched Star Wars and in the original Star Wars, there's the Death Star, this massive sort of base where all the bad guys are, but all they've got to do is find this one little chink in its armor and shoot something through this tiny little hole, and that will make the whole thing explode. When you have sort of low self-esteem and you've built up all this kind of, I'm trying my best to sort of get through life, it only takes one little mistake to be completely punctured. So if you are, for example, if you have quite low self-esteem about your achievements, let's say, you might work really, really hard all the time and try your very, very best. But then when you do fail at something or something doesn't go quite as you wanted it to, you might completely deflate. It might completely crush you. Whereas perhaps somebody with more robust self-esteem would make a mistake and say, that's a shame, I've made a mistake. Which odds are, if you don't have brilliant self-esteem, odds are you're able to do for other people. You know, if somebody else makes a mistake, odds are you're able to say, oh, don't worry, like that's just a mistake. And you can still see their value. You can still see that one mistake doesn't make them rubbish in total. And that's something we can use as we go forward. But that's our little definition, I suppose. So people with, of course, obscene self-esteem, they can go too far the other way, think what they've done is brilliant regardless of whether it is. So that is a thing, but that's not what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how can you help yourself if you're noticing that you find it very difficult to feel good about yourself and to feel at ease in yourself, I suppose. So first off, let's talk a little bit about where it comes from. Covered a bit about what it is, let's talk about where it comes from. Sometimes it comes from negative messages. So people telling you or showing you that you aren't good at stuff. So if you've been made to feel, for example, at school, that you are stupid or that you can't get things, that's really common for people who have found it hard to wrap their heads around things or took a bit longer to get their heads around things. Or it happens quite a lot for people where there was perhaps some neurodiversity or wasn't picked up, or something about their learning style just didn't match how school was going on. Or maybe there was just stuff going on at home or outside of school or in school that prevented them from being able to do things. Or frankly, maybe they just found maths quite difficult. They just found maths quite difficult, but were made to feel like that was a flaw. And that meant that they were stupid or they can't do it. And that's a horrible place to be. And maybe what that can mean is that you can end up then feeling quite self-conscious about that. So sometimes it comes from messages, either people saying horrible things to you. So bullying, again, would be another example of how you might become quite self-conscious about stuff. So when I was a teenager, I was quite conscious of sort of not being manly enough, if that makes sense. In a way, I ended up dealing with it by kind of leaning into it. So, I didn't like football, I did ballet, I did trampolining. And I was kind of very self-conscious about that for quite a long time. That would be an example. Sometimes, though, it's not as obvious or as clear-cut as that. Sometimes you might be thinking, well, no, actually, generally people were pretty nice to me, but I doubt myself all the time and I don't really get why. And one way we can understand that is when your self-esteem, your respect for yourself, your value of yourself has been quite tightly or closely linked with doing certain things or being a certain way. For example, I can feel good about myself if I've been nice to everybody. So if that was something that was valued about you and something that you got praised for or got accepted for, you might constantly feel like your self-worth is dependent upon how useful you've been to other people or how well you have served other people. And if you feel like you've done that well today, maybe you'll feel okay. But if there's a time when somebody's not okay with you, maybe then you'll start to feel really, really struggling with that. Or perhaps if it was about academic achievement and you did really well or you found it easy or people praised you for that and you felt good about that and you enjoyed it, what you might start to find is you have perhaps a skewed view of what's expected. You might feel like I am worthwhile as long as I am top of the class or as long as I am achieving as highly as I possibly could. And then when a situation comes along where perhaps that's not been possible or it's not worked out that way, you might feel crushed by that. So there's keeping people happy, there's academic, there's how you look. So again, it can come from messages that people are giving you about how you look, negative messages. It can also come from if you felt like you were attractive and people liked that about you or called you pretty or beautiful or handsome, whatever it might be, you might again feel like that's part of my worth. And that might help us understand if that's then something you become a bit fixated upon, that you kind of pick flaws in how you look, or it never feels quite like enough, I suppose. The word I would use for that kind of understanding of how self-esteem develops is conditional. So there's two types of self-worth. Unconditional self-worth, which is simply I am worthwhile, kind of regardless of what I do. That is a very stable thing to do. However, it's also not completely realistic. Like, we do need some, usually, kind of healthy questioning of ourselves, of expectations that we have. So I have expectations, for example, of my children that they will treat each other nicely. And I will tell them if that's not being the case. There will be expectations of sort of being considerate or doing certain things. That would be conditional. So at the end of the day, I might think about how I have been or what I have done with my day and feel better or worse about myself depending on what I've done. Or the classic thing, like if your body kind of goes up and down in size, there might be some times where you feel like you can look in the mirror and feel like, oh, okay, I'm looking pretty good today. And other times where you might feel, oh, I don't look so good today. What we'd want for everybody is to feel absolutely kind of at ease with themselves, regardless. But often That's difficult to achieve. However, what we can do is make the balance reasonably good. So, for example, if it's about what I've achieved in my day, or when I look in the mirror how I look, ideally what we'd want is an acceptance. That kind of regardless of what I've done in that day, regardless of how I feel about how I look or how I've been, I can look at myself and know that I am still worthy. Worthy of love, worthy of care, worthy of compassion, worthy of treating with respect. I'm worthy of being allowed things, allowed breaks, allowed food, allowed joy, allowed fun. Sometimes with self-esteem, that's not what's happening when it's low, is you might look at what you've done or what you're seeing in the mirror or how you've been with other people, whatever it might be. And the problem is that it makes you question your worth. Oh, I've not done this today, and it makes me feel like I'm not worth something. When we combine that with the glasses, of course, that's really difficult, because when you're wearing your I'm not good enough glasses and you're looking in the mirror, all you're going to see is flaws, all you're going to see is problems. Not only that, but you're seeing problems, and those problems are making you feel like you're not worth something. That is a difficult place to be stuck. And then if that makes you deny yourself things like I'm not allowed to be happy with myself, I'm not allowed love, I'm not allowed, well, all those things we've said, then that starts to become a spiral, because you treat yourself badly, have a go at yourself, it makes you feel worse, and it sort of drags you down. When we compare that again to perhaps a couple of different things, let me take a pause and just think about worth for a moment. Unconditional worth. I think about this quite a lot because I think about my kids. So what I would want my kids to know is that when you were born, so when my eldest was born, she was born in, my wife gave birth in one of those big pools in the hospital. It's a water birth. And she came out and she was just like floating around on the bottom of the pool. And then my wife bent down and fished her out. And while the midwives were helping my wife, she handed our daughter to me. And when I held her, she looked rank. Newborn babies look weird. She looked like a sort of skinny little baby monkey. That's what she looked like. She was born worth something. She was born worthy of protection. She was born worthy of love. She was born worthy of respect and good treatment, of food, of nourishment, of joy. You're already worth something. Somewhere along the way as adults, we can lose sight of that. Maybe because we are made to feel differently as we grow up, that maybe we're not worthy of that. But every baby is worth something when they're born. They don't have to prove it. And that's the same with people. Don't get me wrong, I think there are some people who we would want to know that they should feel less worthy. But those people tend to be awful people who do awful things, not people that haven't quite done well enough in their exams, whatever that means. People that haven't done what they wanted to do in their exams. Those people don't deserve hatred or rejection. The people that deserve our vitriol are, dictators and stuff. So the question is, how do you do it? How do you feel better about yourself? What can you do? Number one is being able to recognise it. So the thing that I would say is, if this is something that's going on for you, one of the barriers to being able to do anything about it is that you don't even know. You don't even know when you're being harsh on yourself, because it doesn't feel like I'm being harsh on myself. It feels like I'm just telling myself the truth. It's not like I'm sitting there going, oh yeah, I'm just hard on myself about my achievement. If you knew that, that would be the starting point for being able to do it. But instead it feels like I am not good enough. It's not I'm thinking I'm not good enough. It's I am not good enough. It feels like the truth. So number one is even just practicing recognizing when it's happening. And the way that we can do that is to practice noticing when you're feeling down about yourself, frustrated with yourself, whatever it might be, writing down what's going through my head. What am I saying to myself? And what tone of voice am I using? And then, either in the moment, if you're up to it, or later on, come back to it. Compare that to, if it was my best friend in the same situation, what would I have said to them? And what tone of voice would I use? So odds are, if it was something about the mirror, for example, it is unlikely you would stand next to your best friend and say, you look disgusting. Ugh, you should take that off. You should just never go outside at all. Or if your best friend made a mistake, it's unlikely that you'd be going, oh, you are useless. What is wrong with you? Odds are it would be something more like, look, you look fine. Or, okay, those trousers aren't for you. Those trousers aren't for you, but I still think you look great. Or if it was the mistake thing, it might be, look, people make mistakes. It's okay. It's all right. We'll tidy it up. That is how you tell. The only way you can tell whether you're being hard on yourself is to compare it to what you'd say to somebody else. If actually somebody else had made this mistake, you go, you know what, mate, that was really stupid. You really should have done better there. Fine, you can say that to yourself. But if it would be different to somebody else, that's our clue that maybe we want to do something different. It's also the beginnings of being able to access, well, what would you say to somebody else? And to access the compassion that you reserve for other people and that you don't use for yourself. So our second step really is building on that compassion, is to spend time practicing treating yourself and speaking to yourself more like you would to other people, more like you would with other people. So what we mean by that is spending a bit of time thinking about the people that you love. So when I gave you that example of how I looked at my newborn daughter, I'm willing to bet you can kind of feel in yourself a little bit about what that's like. The warmth, I suppose, that you feel when you look at somebody that you love. What I want you to have a think about, sitting here right now listening to this or watching this, is I want you to think about somebody that you love and somebody that you appreciate. It can be a person, it can be a pet. I don't mind. And I just want you to pay attention to how your body feels when you think about looking at them and feeling the warmth and love that you have for them. Particularly if it's a person, the way that they look. How do you look at them? Do you find yourself zooming in on all the, I'm doing quote marks here, flaws? Or do instead you just look at them the way that they are, not particularly judge the way that they look, but just appreciate that that's their face. This is your face, and I love you and your face. When they achieve something, how do you feel? When they don't achieve something, when they don't do as well in something as they wanted to, how do you feel? How do you look at them? What do you say? What do you think? What do you want for them? And the thing I'm going to ask you to do is to practice tapping into this feeling by spending time looking at the people that you love and feeling what that's like in your body, paying attention to the tone of your thoughts about them. And then I want you to practice using that same feeling and that same way, those same kind eyes, or maybe even a better way of putting this is we're just swapping out those I'm not good enough glasses and putting on our our sort of love glasses, for want of a better phrase. I probably could have found a better phrase, but still, let's just go with that. Warmth, maybe. Compassion glasses. There we go. And the next time you look in the mirror, or the next time you are doubting your ability to do something, or you're having a go at yourself, I want you to practice putting on your love glasses, your compassion glasses. And just see if you can look at this situation and look at yourself with a little bit of the warmth that you use for everybody else. if it's somebody else, what would you say? What would your tone of voice be like? What would you want to do? It takes time, and often it feels really weird. And often what you'll find is the first stage is it feels very confusing. The second stage is that you start to be able to see what you'd say to other people, but you can't quite take it on board. And then the third stage, after lots and lots of practice, is with using this physical feeling. It only really works if you include the feeling in your body. That starts to be able to get in. While we're on letting things in, another thing I'd like you to try is being on the lookout for compliments that people give you, or achievements that you make, achievements that you do, I suppose. Because typically, when we don't feel great about ourselves, those find it hard to get in. But your brain's already great at picking out all the things you're not doing right. So let's help it look out for the things that maybe you are and that are maybe good. And then finally, we're going to talk about doing stuff. So one of the big things about self-esteem, feeling self-conscious about things, feeling not great about ourselves, having a go at ourselves as if we are rubbish at things, is that we don't treat ourselves fairly. We actually don't. It's not only the way you speak to yourself, it's how you treat yourself, what you allow yourself and what you don't allow, what you hide away from, whether or not you stand up for yourself. When we don't feel like we're good enough or we're worthwhile, sometimes we are cruel to ourselves. If you're harsh about the way that you look or your body, you might deny yourself food and sustenance. You might deny yourself the fun of using your body. So when it's exercise, you're not going to do it just for fun. You'll do things that are punishing. If it's about achievement, you might find it really difficult to allow yourself rest or time where you're not doing things that are productive. You might instead feel like you just constantly got to be doing. You might even feel guilty or physically on edge when you try and just do something nice. So part of breaking out of this self-esteem cycle would be practicing, okay, if it was somebody else, I would say it was okay for them to take a break. I would say it's all right to go and read your book for a bit or to go for a walk. When it's me, I don't allow myself that. I can see now that's perhaps me being a bit harsh on myself. What if I practice going and doing something that I would think was okay for somebody else to do? And again, initially, it will be uncomfortable. But the more you do it, the easier it will get. If it's about keeping people happy all the time, one of the things that can really trigger that is if there's somebody in your life that's just never happy, but that's perhaps something for another day. The things that you might practice is standing up for yourself. And what I mean by that is maybe small things. Actually saying, what I'd quite like for dinner today is this. Instead of saying, oh, I don't mind, and everybody else comes first. Just treating your wants and needs, not as if they're more important than everybody else's, but as if they're just as important as everybody else's. That it's okay for you to say out loud what it is that you would like. That can be a useful thing to do. So just to summarise some of the things, practice recognising it. So write down moments when you feel down about yourself, frustrated with yourself, anxious about things. What are you saying to yourself and how are you saying it? How does that compare to how you'd speak to anybody else? And then practice noticing how you are compassionate towards other people, the love that you feel for other people, and how you'd speak to them. And then practice applying that to yourself. And then finally, identifying the kinds of things you deny yourself or make yourself do or don't allow yourself to do because of the way that you feel. Think about, well, if it was anybody else, what would I want them to be able to do? And then see if you can practice doing some of those things. Allowing yourself moments of joy, moments of rest. Treating yourself as if you are worth something. And maybe that you always were. I hope that's been helpful. Thanks for sticking with me. If you want to know more, I'm sure you've heard me say this before if you've listened to all my podcasts, but there's plenty of other places to go. So first of all, there's more of these podcasts. You can get bonus episodes The next one's going to be on performance anxiety and sort of exams in particular. That's going to be one of the bonus episodes, and you can find all the details of how to sign up for bonus episodes in the show notes. And how to get hold of me. If you're after some one-to-one support or you want me to come into your organisation or your school to do a talk or something, drop me a line. We'll see what we can do. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.